Humanity had always been the galaxy's peacekeepers in the vast expanse of space. Their reputation was built on diplomacy, patience, and an unyielding belief that kindness could change the hearts of even the most hardened alien civilizations. For centuries, humans had worked tirelessly to unite the many races of the stars, forging bonds that no one could have anticipated. A species from a tiny blue planet standing as a beacon of hope in a chaotic universe. Their diplomats were respected, their negotiators feared, and their soldiers revered, not for their brutality, but for their ability to quell conflict without ever needing to draw a weapon. But as the years passed, and humanity's influence grew, some began to believe that their kindness was no longer seen as strength, but as weakness. The galaxy had grown complacent in their peace. Humans were no longer seen as a powerful force, but as reliable caretakers, guardians of the quiet order that existed across the stars. Their presence was a given, a constant that was no longer questioned or feared. In the halls of power, alien leaders spoke of human cooperation as if it were a simple fact, not a priceless gift humanity had offered. It was a single act that broke the surface of this brittle peace, a brutal strike, an event so violent, so senseless, that it shook the very foundation of humanity's role in the galaxy. The assassination of Ambassador Marie Costa on the world of Talson VI was the spark, the catalyst that would ignite the fire of change. Costa had been a beloved figure. She had been a symbol of human values across the galaxy. Her work with the Talson species had been instrumental in bridging the cultural and political gap between the Talsons and their neighboring systems. Costa's death was no accident. It was a deliberate act carried out by the Talson extremist faction, who believed that humanity's influence was an insidious force corrupting their planet's future. For the first time in a generation, the galaxy saw what it had never dared imagine: a human government shaken to its core, filled with a rage so palpable that it echoed through every communication channel that could carry it across the stars. The United Earth government met in an emergency session under the glow of red emergency lights. Where once calm voices of reason had ruled the room, now there was silence, a tense quiet that filled the space as if the galaxy itself held its breath. It was President Leah Grayson who spoke first, her voice cold and steady as she looked upon the gathered leaders. "The time for patience is over," she said, her eyes sweeping across the faces of those who had once looked to humanity for guidance, but now treated them as a tool to be used and discarded. "They will regret underestimating us," she continued, each word carrying the weight of 1,000 unspoken truths. From the darkest corners of the room, murmurs began to rise, protests from those who still believed in peace, but Grayson silenced them with a single word: "Enough. Humanity has been kind for too long. No more." There was a finality to her statement, one that none could deny, and in that moment, the galaxy began to realize something had shifted. Humans were no longer interested in being nice. The game had changed, and no one was prepared for what was to come next. The silence that followed President Grayson's declaration spread across the United Earth Council like wildfire. The galaxy, for all its complexity and vastness, seemed to hold its breath as humanity stepped back from the precipice of diplomacy and into something far more dangerous. The decision was made, and it was final. No more alliances out of obligation, no more putting the needs of others ahead of their own. Humanity was done being nice. In the days that followed, the full extent of the new human stance became clear. The first shockwave hit when the United Earth Navy withdrew its ships from peacekeeping duties in multiple sectors. No prior warning, no discussions, just a sudden, decisive departure from key posts in contested systems. In the star systems where humans had once acted as mediators, bringing warring species to the table for talks, now there was nothing but silence. The vacuum left behind was palpable. It was the first sign that humans weren't just withdrawing. They were changing the rules. Then came the appearance of the fleet. A massive human armada, once thought to be purely defensive in nature, emerged from the depths of the Syndra Nebula. It was a fleet that no one had anticipated, not even the closest human allies. Dozens of warships, each equipped with the latest in human technology, each bristling with power and purpose. Their mission was clear. The TA system, a hub of intergalactic trade and neutral ground, had long been controlled by the Talson extremist faction, responsible for Ambassador Costa's death. The Talsons had pushed too far, and now humanity had come to remind them of the cost of underestimating Earth's resolve. The fleet didn't move in with blinding speed or brute force. Instead, they moved with precision and an eerie calm, as though the battle had already been won in their minds. The Talson defenses, once considered formidable, began to fall apart almost immediately. Not through overwhelming firepower, but through sheer strategy. Human forces disabled communications, scrambled the enemy's fleet, and cut off supply lines, all without firing a single shot in the first few hours. As the Talson fleet regrouped, expecting an all-out assault, they were met with something entirely unexpected. A series of coordinated strikes, each one calculated to target their command structure and infrastructure rather than their ships. In a span of hours, the Talsons lost the ability to communicate, the ability to coordinate, and the ability to fight back effectively. The human fleet didn't destroy the Talson forces. They crippled them, leaving them disoriented and vulnerable. And all the while, human forces kept their distance, never engaging in open conflict, simply maintaining a presence that was far more menacing than any barrage of fire. Back on Earth, the United Earth government issued a single terse statement: justice has been served. For the rest of the galaxy, it was a moment of stunned silence. The Talson extremists, who had thought their actions would go unpunished, now found themselves humiliated. Not by sheer military might, but by the realization that humans had never needed to be cruel to win. They had simply adapted and outthought their enemies. The impact of this event rippled across the galaxy. Allies of the Talsons and neutral parties alike began to question their stance on humanity. The reputation of Earth had shifted in an instant. The galaxy now had to confront a reality it hadn't prepared for. Humanity was no longer interested in diplomacy for its own sake. They were in the game to win, and they would not hesitate to do whatever it took to protect their own. The age of human kindness had ended. What came next would be a new chapter, one that no one could predict, but everyone would feel. The events at the Ta system had left the galaxy reeling. The Talson extremist faction was in shambles, humiliated by a swift and calculated strike from humanity. But what was perhaps even more disturbing to the rest of the galaxy was the way humans had conducted themselves. There had been no grand speeches, no threats. Just quiet, efficient action that left no room for debate. No one had expected such decisiveness from a species that had long prided itself on diplomacy. For the first time in generations, the galaxy's leaders began to question the true nature of humanity's power. The United Earth government had always been seen as a voice of reason, a stabilizing force in an otherwise chaotic universe. But what happened in the Ta system had shattered that perception. The truth was now undeniable. Humanity had the power to destroy entire fleets without ever lifting a finger. It was a power that few had anticipated, and fewer still were willing to challenge. The response from the alien governments was swift and unified. A coalition of the galaxy's most influential species, the Karens, the Korki, and the Uthra, met in secret to discuss the growing threat of a human-led galaxy. They had long relied on human cooperation, whether for military aid or political influence, but the events of Tau had shown them that they could no longer take humanity's goodwill for granted. What if Earth decided it no longer wanted to play the role of peacemaker? What if humanity, once the symbol of peace, now had the power to reshape the galaxy according to its own will? The first step was an embargo. Trade routes once controlled by humans were now blocked by the coalition, with the intent to weaken Earth's economic position. The reasoning was simple. Without resources, humanity would lose its leverage. But they underestimated one crucial factor. Humans were nothing if not resourceful. Within days, the embargo was circumvented by a network of covert operations and backdoor deals that caught the coalition by surprise. Earth had anticipated this move and had already secured alternate supply chains, ones that bypassed the Galactic Council's control. The embargo did nothing but strengthen human resolve. Next came the threats. A new alliance of military species, Those who had once considered humanity a manageable force now began to make their intentions clear. The Xaran Empire, with its vast armada and centuries of military experience, openly declared that they would no longer tolerate humanity's growing influence in the galaxy. The Orcs, a species known for their brutal tactics and high-tech warfare, followed suit, stating that Earth's presence in the galaxy was becoming a destabilizing force. They would no longer stand by and allow humans to dictate the future of the galaxy. But what the Coalition failed to understand was the very thing that had made humanity so effective in the first place. It wasn't just the technology, or the military might, or even the strategic genius that humans were now demonstrating. It was their will. Humans had endured hardships unlike any species in the galaxy, from the wars of their past to the survival of an unforgiving planet. And it was that indomitable will that made them unpredictable. While the Coalition focused on military posturing, humans were quietly preparing, learning, adapting. The galaxy's first mistake was thinking that they could intimidate Earth into submission. The second mistake, however, would be far worse. They had no idea what humanity was truly capable of when they stopped being nice. The tides were turning, and as each new move from the Coalition faltered, one thing became clear to the galaxy. Humanity was no longer the weak link in the chain. They were the chain itself. And it was only a matter of time before the rest of the galaxy understood just how dangerous that could be. As the galaxy's tensions escalated and the coalition of alien powers took steps to isolate Earth, something unexpected began to unfold. Not all species viewed humanity's growing power as a threat. Among the stars, there were those who had long been allies of Earth, who saw in humans not just strength, but a way forward. A path to a new, united galaxy. The idea that humans were capable of reshaping the future wasn't lost on these species. It was, however, their own experiences of manipulation and betrayal by the galaxy's old powers that made them see humans as the solution rather than the problem. The most notable among them were the Rinkari, a species from the distant planet of Feltor, known for their fierce independence and a long history of being exploited by more powerful factions. The Rinkari had always admired humans, seeing in them a reflection of their own struggle for autonomy and survival. When the Talsin assassination took place and the United Earth government made their declaration, the Rinkari saw an opportunity. Rinkari diplomats, once relegated to the periphery of galactic politics, now began to openly court humanity. They offered support, not out of fear or submission, but out of genuine belief that a partnership with Earth could bring about a new era of strength and self-determination. In exchange for human assistance, the Rinkari shared valuable resources and strategic knowledge that allowed humans to bolster their military capabilities even further. This was the beginning of what would later become a key alliance, a partnership between humanity and several other marginalized species, all of whom had been neglected or oppressed by the old galactic powers. The formation of this new coalition wasn't without its risks. The galaxy's established powers, those that had once looked to humanity as nothing more than a source of labor or a tool for maintaining peace, now watched as a new force began to rise. But this wasn't a force of destruction, it was a force of transformation. Humans and their new allies worked not just to build their own power, but to empower others who had long been forgotten or dismissed. While the coalition of the galaxy's old powers focused on their military posturing and their economic sanctions, humanity's new alliance was quietly building a counterforce, one based not just on military might, but on unity. They worked to unite the disparate species who had long suffered under the weight of the galaxy's larger powers, showing them that it wasn't just about fighting back, it was about working together. Earth's leadership wasn't about domination, but about lifting others up to a level where they could stand side by side with humanity as equals. The most profound shift came not from the battlefield, but from within the councils of the galaxy. Many leaders who had once dismissed Earth as naive or weak began to reconsider. The Rinkari's influence grew, and with it, humanity's credibility. As species from all corners of the galaxy joined this growing coalition, the old order began to unravel. The newly formed alliance was a direct challenge to the galactic status quo, and its message was simple: cooperation, yes, but not at the cost of independence. The alliance, once small and unremarkable, now became the voice of a new era. Humanity had stopped being nice, but it hadn't stopped being a force for good. They didn't just want to win. They wanted to rebuild a galaxy where strength was measured not by the power to destroy, but by the power to uplift and unite. And this message, this new vision for the future, was beginning to resonate across the stars. The question now was no longer whether humanity could lead. It was whether the galaxy was ready to follow. The war was no longer just a series of isolated skirmishes. It was an all-out struggle for control of the galaxy's future. The old powers, shaken by humanity's newfound determination, scrambled to maintain their dominance. The coalition of alien species, once unified in their resolve to curb human influence, now found themselves stretched thin as the balance of power slowly shifted. Humanity and its growing alliance were no longer just defending themselves. They were on the offensive, challenging the very foundations of galactic politics. The turning point came when a mysterious signal was intercepted by human intelligence, a faint, ancient transmission that seemed to emanate from a forgotten corner of the galaxy. It led them to a region known as the Iridium Expanse, a vast stretch of space that had been abandoned centuries ago after the collapse of an ancient empire. The area was largely uncharted, its secrets hidden beneath layers of time and dust. It was here, in the shadows of long-dead civilizations, that humanity would make its boldest move yet. What the human explorers found in the expanse shocked them. The ruins of an ancient city, older than any known species in the galaxy, lay buried beneath the surface of a desolate planet. The structures, though weathered by time, were intact, and within them were technologies that humanity had only ever dreamed of. Energy sources that could power entire fleets, weapons that could level planets, and more importantly, advanced systems of communication that could bypass the galaxy's fragmented infrastructure. The discovery was nothing short of revolutionary. This forgotten world, once the heart of a long-extinct empire, held the key to humanity's next step in their rise to dominance. With the help of their Ringcary allies, who were experts in ancient technologies, the humans began to reverse-engineer the powerful devices they had uncovered. Within weeks, they had harnessed the energy of the long-lost empire, and soon after, they were ready to strike. The first target was the planet of Kol-Nar, a key stronghold of the Xarans, who had been one of the loudest voices against humanity's growing influence. Kol-Nar was heavily fortified, surrounded by a massive defense grid, and protected by a fleet of Xaran warships. It was a world that no one believed could be breached. Yet humanity's new technology gave them an edge that no one had predicted. They didn't attack head-on. Instead, they used the ancient communication systems to send a virus deep into the Xaran fleet's command network, crippling their ability to coordinate. With the fleet disoriented, human forces struck swiftly and decisively. The battle itself was not one of brute force, but of intelligence and precision. The Xarans, once considered masters of space warfare, found themselves unable to respond to the human assault. Within hours, their defenses collapsed. Kol-Nar was taken, and with it, a strategic stronghold that would serve as the foundation for humanity's push into the heart of enemy territory. As word spread of humanity's victory, the galaxy was thrown into a frenzy. The Xaran Empire, once proud and powerful, now stood on the brink of collapse. The coalition of alien species, who had once viewed humanity as a threat to be contained, now had to grapple with the undeniable reality. Humans had just won a decisive battle against one of the most advanced military powers in the galaxy. The old powers, once so confident in their dominance, were no longer the ones in control. The human-led alliance had proven itself not just capable, but unstoppable. The Battle of Kol-Nar was a turning point. It marked the first of many victories to come. The galaxy now had to face a new truth. Humanity, once thought to be a mere caretaker of peace, had become the catalyst for a new order. and there was no going back. The victory at Kolnar sent shockwaves through the galaxy. What had once seemed impossible was now undeniable. Humanity, backed by its growing alliance, had toppled one of the most formidable empires in the galaxy with precision, intelligence, and an understanding of ancient technologies. The consequences of that victory rippled through the stars, forcing even the most powerful and cautious species to reconsider their stance on humanity. The Exaran Empire, once proud and influential, found itself reeling. Their fleet had been destroyed, their command structure shattered, and their colonies on the verge of revolt. The fall of Kolnar was a symbol of their decline, and the galaxy watched as the once mighty Exaran forces scrambled to hold on to what little power they had left. But it wasn't just the Exarans who were feeling the pressure. The ripples from humanity's rise began to affect every corner of the galaxy. For the first time in centuries, the galactic powers that had once been considered untouchable were forced to confront the possibility that their time was over. The Korki, the Uthra, and even the elusive Talsan factions, each of them began to reassess their positions. They had long seen humanity as a reliable, if somewhat naive, species, a useful ally when needed but not one to be feared. Now, humanity's actions were impossible to ignore. The galaxy could no longer pretend that humans were simply a small, peaceful species with good intentions. Humanity was a force, and it was one that would not be denied. The coalition of alien powers, once united in their attempts to stifle humanity's influence, found itself splintering. Species that had previously been hesitant to join Earth's cause now saw the growing tide of human power and made a choice. Some, like the Rinkari, eagerly threw their support behind humanity, recognizing the strength and leadership that had emerged from Earth's response to aggression. Others, more cautious but intrigued by the success at Kolnar, began to quietly shift their alliances, testing the waters of this new order. The Uthra, known for their quiet diplomacy and long history of isolation, were among the first to signal a change. Their leaders, once skeptical of humanity's rise, began opening backdoor channels to Earth's diplomats. They were no longer just asking for help, they were offering it. The Uthra understood that if they did not align themselves with humanity, they risked being left behind as the new power structure formed. However, not all reactions were so positive. Some species, notably the Exarans, now viewed humanity with intense hostility. They were determined to rebuild, to reclaim their position in the galaxy. They had underestimated humanity before, and now they saw Earth's rise as a personal affront to their long-standing dominance. The Exaran Empire's leaders vowed to restore their empire, no matter the cost. Their focus now shifted from reclaiming lost territory to confronting the growing human threat head-on. At the same time, the once stable trade routes were disrupted. The galaxy's economy, once dependent on the quiet stability provided by human diplomacy, now found itself in turmoil. Some factions attempted to break away from the human-led trade agreements, seeing their own interests jeopardized by Earth's increasing influence. But those who sought to isolate humanity quickly found themselves without resources, struggling as Earth's trade partners flourished under the new order. Humanity's rise had exposed cracks in the foundation of the galaxy's old power structure. What had once been a delicate balance of power was now something much more fluid, far less predictable. Species that had long ruled through manipulation and fear were now struggling to keep up with the speed of change, while humanity and its allies gained strength at an unprecedented rate. As the old order crumbled, a new question began to surface. Was the galaxy ready for the changes humanity was bringing? Or would the old powers strike back, desperate to reclaim what they had lost? In the midst of this shifting landscape, humanity's resolve only grew stronger. The ripples of their actions were clear. They had stopped being nice, and now the galaxy was beginning to feel the full weight of what that meant. The collapse of the Terran Empire marked the beginning of a new era in the galaxy. What had once been a universe of complex alliances and unspoken hierarchies was now being torn apart by the rise of a human-led coalition. The old powers, those who had long held sway over galactic affairs, began to fracture under the weight of their own arrogance and miscalculation. The human approach had been simple but effective: strength without mercy, intelligence without compromise. It was a formula that the galaxy's established powers had ignored for far too long. The first to break were the Orcs, once feared for their aggressive tactics and technologically superior warships. They had long been a dominant force in the galaxy, their military might unchallenged. But when the human-led coalition began to press on their borders, their once imposing fleet was found wanting. The Orcs had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt and outthink their enemies. Human fleets, now equipped with the advanced technology from the Forgotten Worlds, began to neutralize Orc strongholds with surgical precision. The Orcs, who had relied on brute force, found themselves locked in a battle of attrition they could not win. Their empire began to crumble, one system at a time. As the Orcs fell, other species began to take notice. The Uthra, the quiet diplomats who had long kept to themselves, were the next to move. Their isolation had served them well in the past, but the galaxy was changing. The Uthra saw what had happened to the Xarans and the Orcs, and they knew that they could not afford to remain on the sidelines. The Uthra opened channels of communication with humanity's leaders, offering support in exchange for protection and a voice in the new order. In return, humanity granted them access to new trade routes and resources, strengthening the Uthra's position in the galaxy. It was a deal born out of necessity, but it was also a sign of the shifting tides. Yet not all species were so quick to change their allegiances. The Talsons, who had played a pivotal role in the assassination of Ambassador Costa, were among the last to join the human-led coalition. Their decision to remain neutral, even in the face of mounting evidence that humanity's power was on the rise, was a calculated one. The Talson extremists were a faction that had thrived in chaos, and they believed that they could weather the storm. But as the human coalition grew stronger, the Talsons found themselves increasingly isolated. The rest of the galaxy had seen the way humanity dealt with the Xaran and Orc threats, and they knew that the Talsons would not be spared if they continued to stand in opposition. The tipping point came when a human-led strike force landed on the Talson homeworld, a powerful and symbolic move that sent a clear message to the galaxy. It wasn't an all-out invasion. Instead, human forces neutralized key military installations, severing the Talsons' ability to coordinate any resistance. Within days, the Talson leadership capitulated. They had been outmaneuvered at every turn, their once formidable empire now a shadow of its former self. The galaxy watched as the Talsons were brought to the negotiating table, not as equals, but as subordinates. The message was unmistakable. The old ways of power, of fear and manipulation, no longer held sway. As the Talson Empire crumbled, so too did the rest of the old galactic order. The Orcs, the Uthra, the Talsons, all of them had been forced to adapt or fall, and in their place, a new power was emerging. The human-led coalition, once underestimated, was now the dominant force in the galaxy. The old order, built on inequality, fear, and control, had been replaced by something new. A galaxy where strength was no longer about crushing your enemies, but about building something greater together. The old powers were falling, and humanity had not only survived, it had reshaped the galaxy in its image. A new dawn was breaking across the stars, and it was humanity that stood at its forefront. The galaxy was no longer the same. And as the human-led coalition grew stronger with each passing day, the question remained: would the rest of the galaxy accept this new order, or would they resist until the very end? The galaxy had changed beyond recognition. What had once been a fractured and often hostile expanse of stars, filled with ancient empires and warring species, was now slowly but unmistakably being unified under the leadership of humanity and its allies. The old powers had been dismantled, one by one, and in their place, a new order was rising, a fragile but undeniable peace forged by the strength of those who had long been overlooked and oppressed. At the heart of this transformation stood humanity. The species that had once been regarded as nothing more than another insignificant player in a vast, indifferent universe was now the force that drove the galaxy's future. They had shown that kindness, while a virtue, was not enough to secure survival. Strength, intelligence, and unity were the true currencies of power in this new era. Humanity had stopped being nice, and in doing so, had forced the galaxy to take notice. The first council of the New Order convened on Earth, in the grand halls of the United Earth Government. Leaders from all over the galaxy had been invited to attend, not as equals, but as representatives of the new reality. The Uthra, the Rinkari, and the few remaining independent factions sat beside humans, their voices now given weight in the decisions that would shape the future. No longer would the old powers be able to dictate terms. The galaxy was moving forward, and it was clear that humanity would be the one to lead the way. The Council's first order of business was to establish a unified galactic government, a governing body that would oversee trade, defense, and diplomacy, and ensure that the mistakes of the past would not be repeated. It was not a dictatorship as many had feared. Humanity's leaders understood that their strength lay in cooperation, not domination. The galaxy's species would have a voice, but it was clear that those voices would be guided by the understanding that the old ways of endless war, betrayal, and manipulation had no place in this new order. Yet even as the foundation for peace was laid, not all were content. There were still factions within the galaxy, remnants of the old powers, who refused to accept the new reality. The Tulsans, though broken, still maintained influence in some corners of the galaxy, and whispers of rebellion began to stir. The Korki, though defeated, plotted in the shadows, their pride too great to let go of their past. And the Exaran remnants, now scattered across the galaxy, were not yet willing to accept their fall from grace. But humanity had proven that it would not tolerate such defiance. The human-led coalition now had the strength and the will to put down any rebellion, not with cruelty, but with resolve. The galaxy had seen what happened to those who underestimated Earth's power, and it was not a fate anyone wished to repeat. Humanity was not simply the protector of peace, it was the enforcer of it. The path forward would not be easy. There would be those who fought against this new order, just as there would be those who resisted change out of fear or hatred. But humanity had already faced the worst the galaxy could throw at it. They had stopped being nice, but they had not lost their capacity for compassion, for understanding. The new order would not be about domination. It would be about ensuring that no species would ever again have to live in fear of those who held power over them. As the first unified government took shape, humanity looked to the stars with hope, not for domination, but for a future where peace was the rule, not the exception. The galaxy had been forever altered the moment humanity stopped being nice, and in that moment they had created a future where kindness, strength, and unity were the pillars on which the galaxy would stand. The new order was not the end, but the beginning of something far greater, a galaxy at last united.